Well, good morning from Dynodaze, and today we have this lovely 5-door red Ralliart Colt in for numerous things. So we're fitting a Airtec front mount intercooler, we're fitting some beautiful Dynodaze silicone hoses. When I say we, you know I mean Rich. Hi Rich, how you doing?
Hello.
Hello mate.
I don't think I'm standing off out there.
Are you allowed to use that?
Nope.
Does your mum know you're using that?
Nope.
Well, here's some kit on the floor.
On the internet.
Oh, lovely Airtec front mount with some red hoses, some red Dynodaze silicone hoses, look absolutely beautiful. We've got some Jubilee clips there. Yeah, looking good. So this one's getting modified and then we're going to map it. So we'll run through the list of mods at the end. It's got some form of exhaust, I can see. Or most cars do have an exhaust these days. Right, let's...
Definitely got an exhaust.
It's definitely got an exhaust. Let's get... Well, which is more than some cars that we see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a Miltech exhaust. That's another...
Don't even start me on that.
That was the last video.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, let's do some stuff. Okay, so our Richard's got the Airtec front mount on, which is massive and still the best one for the Ralliart Colt. Nice red hoses, as you can see, making its way up, and we can see that we've got some lovely Dynodaze red hoses there. I love them. I think they look really nice and they do a good job. So, yeah, brilliant. So it's soon be time to get it on the dyno and start making some power. See you in a minute. Okay, so she's made her up onto the dyno, and it's got its new shiny Airtec front mount and hoses installed. And it's our job today on the dyno to tune according, which is making some noise, to make sure that the fueling's correct, to make sure that we're still safe. Now, we might not make any additional power, but we'll make sure that the fueling's correct. We may actually drop off a little bit in torque because the booster's got to fill a bigger front mount intercooler circuit. But we'll see how we get on. Here we go. Well, red Colt Ralliart in today for Dynodaze silicone hoses and a big ass Airtec front mount intercooler, and it was our Richard's job to make sure that the fueler was okay. And you did drop a few clicks in there, didn't you? And it has pretty much made the same result as last time, but you had to...
Well, I traded a little bit of brake horsepower, a couple of brake horsepower, and then we made a little bit more torque, so sort of one outweighed the other, but I mean, pretty much identical.
Now, obviously, the front mount intercooler at the height of summer is going to make a big difference to this car. It's going to keep the power as opposed to make power. It's going to keep the power on a blue.
Yeah, there is no power to be made from an intercooler. People have this misconception, you know, they think, oh, they put one on, it makes power. And what it does do in the instance of this, where the Colts have a small side mount, that small side mount will obviously heat up. The amount of serviceable air you get into it is minimal. So, for example, obviously, if you're kicking its head in on a red hot summer's day, those charge temps are going to rise. Now, obviously, if you put a good sized front mount, which is in this one, it's the full length of the front grille, then obviously you're going to get more serviceable air, which will help keep it cool, which will then keep charge temps down, which means that you'll
stay on power.
But you'll stay power and be on more power, which you wouldn't be losing because of heat. So, like I say, the actual component itself doesn't make power, but allows you to keep a cooler charge temp, and then obviously, you know, keep your power up there.
Now for this car next, I would suggest a 4-branch manifold, because I think this one's got a little bit of a blow on it.
It does sound like it had a little bit of a blow when I started it from stone cold. It's difficult to see because obviously standard manifolds are quite short and you can't really get a true look underneath. And so I had it running in a minute, it was too hot to try and really have a look.
And then depending what clutch is in it, a 3-port solenoid and and go for a bit of another little bit of a tickle.
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I mean, you wouldn't really make a lot from where we are here. I mean, you really only would aim for 230 foot-pounds and sort of maybe 215 brake. You know, and then obviously what we class as stage 2 with stage 2 clutch, you know, you can really push them to around the sort of 225 to 240. But I feel in that instance that it's all that expense is not worth that extra 10
Unless
brake.
you're going for that Arashi turbo.
Yeah, it's not worth that 10 brake horsepower. But then if you are going for the hybrid at that point, then it is worth it, because it's almost the same gains as between your, you know, as in your nothing and your stage 1.
Because we've always said that stage 1 was best bang for buck.
Yeah, always. I mean, there was never stage 1 was always the best, because, you know, that's taking that car from, say, 160 brake with mods up to around the 200 mark. So, you know, there's a good chunk there. It always feels really responsive. That stage 2 almost feels like it's really expensive, and it's just like milking that last tiny bit out of it that you could possibly get. But by going to the hybrid, again, then they make around that 260 and
so you feel like punchy again, don't you?
Yeah, 240 mark or 250 and 240 mark. And again, you're getting that 40, you know, getting that 40-50 brake again. So it's like, that's really, we class it as a hybrid map, but really that's where like the stage 2 really wanted to be. But obviously the standard turbo is so small and so tiny, you practically maxed it out at stage 1 levels. Stage 1.5 you can do, and then obviously not everyone wants to buy injectors and
no,
manifolds.
wants that much to spend that much money on the car, which is why stage 1 has always been
the absolute best value for money,
and it's been the favourite, hasn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we haven't done that many. I mean, we have done stage 2 cars, but not that many. Obviously, with the Arashi hybrid being out there now as it is, that's becoming more popular, and we are doing
people
a lot
tend to
more
go
of
from
those.
stage 1 to Arashi turbo.
Yeah, they do. They completely skip stage 2. It's just not worth it, not in my opinion.
No, I mean, for me, once you've gone stage 1, you can start building up to the Arashi turbo. So you could then fit your stage 2 clutch, and you can drive it. You can fit your front mount intercooler. You can drive it. You can get your more bolt-ons in steps, in stages, and then be ready for your Arashi and your map and your 3-port and your things like that. So there is you can be methodical with it, if that's I think that's a word, Richard. I'm not sure. It's a bit late
I mean, unfortunately, we've touched on this before, certainly me and you. The parts for Colts are expensive, and the reason that they are expensive in comparison to other vehicles there just isn't the volume of these cars on the road. So, whereas if you've got an EP3 Type R or an FN2, the parts are readily available, and that keeps those parts down. So when you want to buy an exhaust, it's £400-500.
There's 15 different companies that want to make one.
Exactly, 15 different companies want to make one. If you want to buy a clutch, you can spend £120, or you could spend £300 or £400 for a stage 4 competition clutch and all the rest of it. These companies are not interested in doing stuff for the Colts. There isn't enough out there. They just don't do it. So most of, but people don't realise this, most of the stuff that we see for these cars, or should I say Dan initially, certainly, had pushed these companies to make this stuff for these cars, and had to outlay a lot of money, because they wouldn't make them without putting thousands of pounds down and making the first one. So a lot of these parts are available due to us, and only continually pushing them, as we have done, has allowed people to be able to buy modified parts for these, because the market isn't there for them, and there wasn't enough sold, so they're not interested in doing them. Unfortunately, that does make them expensive. So when you want an extreme stage 2 clutch, they come in at an eye-watering nearly £900. But if it was if it's an EP3, you'd be buying it for half that.
Yeah.
But it's just because there's more
economies of scale, isn't it?
Yeah, economies of scale.
We've got X amount of Colts that were on the UK roads. They're dwindling every year, aren't they? We see some get smashed up, and there's less and less and less of them. They're becoming rarer and rarer. At some point, the price of the Colt is actually going to rise. Well,
it has to, because it will go down. But something that we've got to look at as well is that, in comparison, they roughly sold about 1,500 CZTs and about 1,500 Ralliarts in this country, right across the two boards. Well, on an EP3 and an FN2, they sold nearly 50,000 units.
Yeah.
So that's your difference. That's why you can buy parts so much cheaper. And unfortunately, sometimes in the Colt world, people do get upset at the price of the parts, but there's just nothing we can do about that.
I think so. The Colts are still a bargain to buy. For the money that you'd be spending on a CZT with 200 brake horsepower or something, you can't buy anything for that money.
No, I don't think so. Not turbo.
The problem there being that the car is then cheap. So when somebody tells you it's £1,000 to put a clutch in it, they're like aghast, because they didn't only just spent more than £1,000 on the actual
car itself. Yeah.
So there's ups and downs with Colts. I mean, we love them here. We love them. I don't think we'll ever be without one at Dynodaze.
But it's just one of those things. They're getting rarer, and we're not seeing any less, and we've certainly got no less customers than we normally have. But I just think they're going to get rarer. The prices of the Colts are going to go up. When they do go up, and when people are spending $5,000 on a Mitsubishi Colt CZT because it's got low mileage, then again, the price of these parts is not going to be quite outweighed by the value of the car.
That's right.
Want to look at the graph?
Yeah, come on.
Let's do it.
So this is where we end today, and frankly, it's not too dissimilar from where we ended on last time we saw this car. But we've made a little bit of torque. So it's 206 brake horsepower, 227 I'm calling that foot-pound of torque, 178 at the wheels. And I bet that shifts. So thanks for sticking around to the end of the video, guys. Like and subscribe and all that jazz. Code word is value for money. And Richard, we'll see you on the next one, won't we, mate? We will indeed.
I said it before and I'll say it again. Life moves pretty fast.